Still working on lyrics for this. Taking submissions if anybody's interested. Still working on lyrics for the intro jingle that I humbly wrote using GarageBand sound clips. So that's my mix, but we're shopping for new tunes if anybody's interested, and I found a couple of sources, so maybe we'll change the music up soon. But good morning, guys. Welcome to episode 22. Happy Sunday. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Carlos, I like your shirt.
Thank you. It's another birthday shirt that I got for being an old fart. I
have a matching one of those.
What's that?
I said I have a matching one.
Oh, okay. Well, I figured the theme is good. It's appropriate.
Yes.
So why not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Scott, coming to
us
from a newly ventilated sound booth.
Yes. I can stay in here for 90 minutes without it getting up to 80 degrees and 70% humidity now. So I'll be a lot less cranky by the end, hopefully.
That sounds excellent. Sorry, I had to move one of my cats there. We've got she was very interested in the dried cayenne peppers hanging behind my my monitor here. So, Scott, what else do you record in that booth? What are you doing in there for 90 minutes?
My voiceover classes that I take twice a week.
Okay.
Those are long, and I have 3 other podcasts that I do. So they
you're in there a lot.
Usually doesn't take 90 minutes, but when it does, it gets nasty in here.
Yeah, this isn't like you're not like disappearing in here when Jen's like, all right, it's time to do fill in the blank, and you're gone into the.
Oh yeah, it's a nice excuse. Yep, sorry, no, I gotta go record.
Yeah, that's all. I
can't bring your Halloween bins up. Sorry.
Yeah, you should sell the plans for that and be like, tell your wife and family you have a podcast, build this booth, and then you could just go hang out in there for a couple hours uninterrupted.
Well, if you want to do that, I've always thought that the best thing to do is to have an extra bathroom and just have the toilet removed and put an easy lounger in there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I also
just close the door, man. It'd be great, people leave you alone, and then maybe have a soundtrack of bathroom related noises, and people are like, "Ooh, I'll give them some time."
Yeah, you can find those like 60 on YouTube, like 60 minutes of just like some kind of noise playing over and over again. I need 60 minutes of public restroom. Yeah, that's a good idea. You should sell those plans. That's a revenue opportunity. And I saw on Instagram recently, a guy was advertising that they'll come and arrest you in front of your family on Friday afternoon, and then take you away for a week-long fishing trip, and then return you on Monday outside the courthouse. So yeah, that's that somebody was really thinking. But anyhow. So happy Sunday. As I mentioned, I think I mentioned on air, but just in case I didn't, Eddie the Snail is out fishing this weekend. She's on the Sound, Long Island Sound, that is, for those familiar. Definitely jealous. It's great time to be fishing in this late September, fall time, bluefish, stripers, all that kind of stuff. So good for Eddie. She said she's going to try to join us, but certainly I hope that she's wearing a life preserver and staying safe first and foremost. But so much for Eddie. Today's topic and is not fade away. We are going to pay tribute to a fallen rider a little bit later. Somebody that I met very briefly and had a really strong impact on my life, and at least in that moment, and sort of as things are winding on. So we'll talk about that in a little bit, and we'll also talk about some other fallen riders and what it means when something, when you lose somebody like that. Starting off, if you look behind me here, though, guys, you can see the old in the way. The new studio is officially complete. Last piece was the garage door. The garage door that went in Friday night, late Friday afternoon. So now all the.
I like the tarp look better.
Yeah, the tarp.
Yeah, I like the early tarp look, windblown screen look. It kind of tempts the. Those that are adventurous to find out there's a surprise waiting on the other side there.
Yeah, that's right. The only thing protecting all of my stuff was a thin screen, a cheap tarp, And me sitting in here with all the rage that a middle-aged man can summon to waiting for somebody to take it out on. So that was
You, you
that was
couldn't hook up 120-volt tripwire, huh? Just
no, I
just for
did. I have a Ring camera in here, and you can, as I'm sure people know, you can set your Ring camera to like say a message like "Hi, you're being recorded." So I had, it was about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks that we had, probably more than that actually, that we had the tarp configuration, which was because of a delay in the door. But it worked, and here we are. We're past that now. So I'm gonna see if I'm trying to figure out what I can do on the inside of the door. It'd be kind of neat to paint a mural or something like that on there. But I'm going through all my crap. I'm unloading stuff that I've been living in boxes with. So psyched to have this wrapped up. And with that too, I also, as we're going through, you can see my bike in the background there, new tank. Something I wanted to throw up here real quick for anybody who might be interested. If you can see, I've got them on the hand cam here. If you can see, and I'll show it for you guys here just to make sure you're seeing on. I've got a set of these metal tank badges that came off of a 2015 Harley Sportster Custom XL. So it's a 4.5 gallon tank that these came off of. Same tank you see in the background. They were professionally removed, which is to say a professional mechanic took them off. They used like a fishing line type of wire situation where they just get behind there and slide them off. So they're beautiful condition. There's not a scratch.
That's better than the J. LaChapelle flathead screwdriver approach that you probably would have taken.
Yeah, exactly. Just put your foot.
A lot of WD-40 behind it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just chisel and a knife, but
just chisel away and a little WD-40. Yes, yes.
It's on the tank. Use a torch.
Yeah, exactly. No Fumar right here, please. But I don't know. These are, they're in demand from what I was told, and quite a few people have said, hey, you should try to sell those. I am gonna throw them up on eBay for sale if anybody's interested. But looking for folks, if you know somebody who's trying to finish a bike or has a project, I don't need to make a profit or make money on these. I'd rather help somebody out. So I'm also selling the gold flake tank that I took off of this, which is a 2.1 gallon peanut. So I'm going to put that one out there as well if anybody's interested. So check it out. These are hard to find for some reason, which question, why the fuck doesn't, excuse my language, why doesn't Harley just sell these? Like, why can't you walk into a Harley Davidson dealership and buy a part like this off the freaking rack? Why are these so hard to find? They can't be difficult.
Because people are going to put it on their piece of shit bikes. That's why. Don't you remember that idiot that we knew exactly in high school?
Yeah. Yep.
That put the Mustang 5.0 on his Chevette. You put the badges on it.
Yeah, he also had Christmas lights in it too. Remember that guy? Was a guy, Dwayne. That was his name. A guy we worked with at Finest. Yeah.
I think it was Eric, but okay.
Oh yeah, no. Dwayne was the little guy he was friends with.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. Slight debrief. Yeah. Is there a business reason why they don't sell these? Do you think? I mean,
is that?
If, just to be clear, and I'll move us along here, but like when I went out to look at what to sell this for, like what the price is, you can find eBay, motorcycle forums. You find lots of people looking for different kinds and different styles of badges, and they're almost always off of a bike or used or whatever. But for some reason, like you can't go to like the Harley website, for example. And I'm just making this up and say like I need tank badges that I want to buy to fit this kind of tank, and they don't sell them from what I can tell. So it just seems weird to me as a consumer that this is something that's in demand that you can't get. But I don't know. Maybe there's no answer. Somebody, if anybody knows, tell us. What? Say that again?
Yeah, I'm curious. So Facebook Marketplace has got an interesting variety.
Yeah.
When you start putting in there in that marketplace, I mean, I talk about an education about, I keep on looking at different things from mirrors to seats to backrest and things like that. And it runs the gamut.
I haven't really runs the gamut. Facebook Marketplace.
Ridiculously cheap to, because it's an aftermarket,
right,
to the hardcore saying, yes, this is a Harley, official Harley item, and cha-ching, cha-ching. So I'm just curious of what a tank plate like that would be. What is it at the high and the low, depending upon the guy? What do you think something like that goes for? I have no idea.
This set, I think, if as I recall, you're probably talking about between $75 to $150 for the pair, depending on
Huh?
condition. I'm looking solely at eBay. That's where I was looking at this to start with. I'll check out Facebook.
It's amazing because it's all I found Facebook Marketplace, just interesting from an educational and
Yeah,
price because you could then set it to say, you know what, I'm not going to go farther than 25 miles, and it's always a pickup type thing. But then if you say, screw it, I'm going to go for a nice ride. I don't care if I
yeah.
do 80 miles away,
I sold my golf
and
clubs
stuff like
yesterday
that.
on Facebook Marketplace. I haven't golfed in like 10 years. And as I mentioned before, we're taking all this stuff out of storage. I'm like, I don't need these. I sold those in like 20 minutes. And
Mm.
I met a really nice guy who was in town to play golf, and he didn't want to borrow a really expensive set that his friend had. And I was like, these babies are all previously thrown, so you can certainly borrow them and toss them all you want. But I think with real quick, and we'll on Facebook, here's what I found, and I buy and sell parts. So on Facebook, I think unscientific, you're more likely to find people who are unloading shit that they found, as well as people who know what the value of they have. So like on Facebook and Craigslist and other places, I will find like estate sales and things like that where people have a box of motorcycle parts that they don't know what it is. I bought other stuff that way. eBay tends to be people who are really dialed into, they know the value of what they have. And so it's all over the place really. But it's there are a lot of
Jay, the
forums.
tip I learned on this
Yeah,
is to intentionally search with spelling errors, because then you're going to find people who are selling stuff that they
they
don't
don't know
know
what it
what they
is.
have.
Yeah,
So like if you looked
interesting.
Davidson, like Daved, like maybe it's a wife selling her late husband's stuff and doesn't know.
Yeah,
I heard of people doing that with Warhammer
yeah,
collectibles. You intentionally search for misspellings of it and you might find bargains.
yeah. Exactly. Good call there.
Newman!
That was
Yep. And I
definitely.
also have to imagine that Harley Davidson is not going to allow an aftermarket company to make their badge. They're going to come down on that quick because it's a trademarked item,
Yeah,
and if it's not in Harley's interest, nobody's going to produce this thing.
yeah. And you find like people machining stuff themselves, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
really
that makes a
wild.
lot of sense.
Yeah, and people like
Yep,
that too.
I'm ordering a CNC machine right now so I can start producing Harley aftermarket tank badges.
Yeah, I actually I bought a new TV, and a bunch of the like stand and mounting parts that came with it. Everything's 3D printed. Like you could see that like they're starting to shift to that, and these real like construction, like that's all the stand is two 3D printed pieces. But yeah, I definitely have found some spots where you'll see, like I've looked at a lot that it was over my price range. It was like $1,000 that this person threw it up, and it was like 12 sets of chrome pipes that were in mint condition, bars and everything like that. That really, you probably could have flipped that for decent money. But it's definitely, there's a crazy market out there for parts. And if you know somebody who needs some tank badges who can't find them, I have this obsessive my own need. I want to be the person who helps somebody find what they're hunting for. So they need
Well,
it
you
from.
also have provenance on that. So
Yes.
if you can show the provenance, then people might pay more for it because they're not buying a fake,
Yeah, I
or
do find
they're
that
more
too.
confident they're not buying a fake.
Yeah, they also want to know the lineage in terms of like was it on your bike? Was it where did this come from? And I learned that just by.
That's what I meant by provenance.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, and there's a lot of like parts sellers are pretty good about that. Some of them anyway will say like this is a takeoff part, another bike. I don't know what happened to it, that kind of thing. But I am continuing as a quick segue before we move on. And learning the buying and selling of salvage bikes for profit, and I've been really it's kind of like it's sort of tribal industry in that it's easy to get into, but there's lots of there's lots of competition from what I'm finding. So a lot of groups in Mexico, just a couple miles away, that buy bikes and bring them over the border and resell them, not as salvage down there. So at any rate, definitely something I find fascinating when you can find something undervalued, but Captain Obvious statement there. So All right, moving on. We're going to change gears here. We're going to switch into the topic of the day. I'm going to talk for a little bit here, guys, which to kind of give us the background. But please, if you have questions, jump in. And if I missed anything important, because my co-host here and 20th Century All Stars know this story. But the title of today's episode is "Not Fade Away," and where that comes from is a Buddy Holly song, actually, that the Grateful Dead, at least for my likes, made popular. But it's kind of it's taken on a meaning in terms of the people that we meet and that come into our lives, and the idea that our love will not fade away, even if time and people go. And that's an underpinning for today's show. Back in June, early June, I met a guy by the name of Rich. I didn't know what his name was the time that I met him. I was driving from New Jersey to Connecticut on a rented Sportster with my dog on what was an emotional trip for me, and for reasons we don't need to get into. But it was a tough ride, and I was in Connecticut on Route 84, and a road I know you guys know well. It's technically east, but the way, if you're in Connecticut and you're going north and south, we'll say, as the compass, there's only so many highways you can take to do that. And there's 84, which runs diagonal, kind of east to west. There's 91, which runs straight down the middle of the state. And then there's 395. And if you're on 395, you're either going to the casino or to buy drugs. So really, there's only two major highways in Connecticut, and this is one of them, and I've been on it thousands of times in my life. And I stopped at a gas station off of exit 16 on Route 84, and it's in a stretch between Hartford and Danbury, or Waterbury and Danbury more locally, where there's not a ton of easy on-off gas stations. So it's a favorite of mine. There's a little place next to the Mobile called Patty's Pantry, where you can get sandwiches and stuff, and the Mobile is quite well equipped as well. And this is silly sounding, I'm sure, but I can tell you that I have stopped at this gas station probably hundreds of times in my lifetime. And big part of because I have family that lives on either end of where this road spans, so we spend a lot of time. On that day, I was not feeling well, and emotionally, I was had a lot on my mind, and I was driving into a rainstorm with my dog on a rented bike, and on a trip I didn't really want to be on. And I wasn't feeling well, and I stopped at exit 16 like I always do, and immediately I saw this bright reddish orange bike and a rider on it. And as you do, I pulled up behind who I would later to come to find out was Rich. And when I tell you I got off my bike, this dude was positively floating. And I mean that in the most masculine, kick-ass biker way. This guy was levitating on the power of his own, I'm going to fucking ride the shit out of this bike. And he was kind of like pacing around and, doing like, taking a break. And we got to talking, and, we took pictures of Larry. He was really into Larry. And I couldn't find my stickers or the courtesy cards that I carry. They were buried in there. So we took a couple pictures, and I think I told you guys, I know I told this story on the air after it happened, and he had a really cool horizontal draw belt knife that I noticed that was really nice leather work. And at the time, this guy that I met, just for this brief moment, really gave me a shot in the arm. You're reminded immediately, I'm alone a lot, which is, not a fun way to ride sometimes. But when you just see one other rider, and it was like immediately I got this shot in my arm, and I felt how pumped he was. He had told me that and I'm not sure if I have the facts here exactly right. He had said that he had some time off, and his wife told him to, get out of the house for a bit, as our wives often do. So he said, okay, I'm going to Florida for a couple weeks. And that's where I met him. He was headed south to Florida, and I was headed north into New England. And I left that gas station feeling really good. And I told the story about meeting this guy several times on the air, and to certainly friends and family. So that happened back in early June. And just to kind of pause there for a minute, it's one of those when you're having a bad day or something like that. And Scott, you and I talked about this off the air recently in another context where somebody comes into your life even for a few minutes, and it sort of totally changes your perspective. And here was this guy who was just so happy to be out on the road and doing what he loved, and here I was worried about a million things that had nothing to do with riding a motorcycle, which is exactly what you shouldn't be doing when you're on a motorcycle. So he really helped give me a shot in the arm that day. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, and so let me stop there for a second, take a breath. I'll be a good presenter here. And that I don't know. Do you guys remember me telling that story, or is this happened in my dream?
I don't know. You tell a lot of stories.
Fair enough. I'll take that. Yeah, it would have been.
No, I'm kidding. I do remember.
I am curious though, because you're talking about somebody you met at a rest stop, at a brief stop, and in that, it's not like you spent the week hanging with this guy, riding with him. If you could capsulize one key thought or advice or bolt of energy that he shared with you, or insight, what was it that really made you kind of like take 2 steps back and say, yeah, fuck yeah, and you did that? So
he was entirely.
Did you remember what?
Yeah, he was entirely in the moment. When I say the guy was levitating, I mean, he was like, I just picture, I'm not making light of it, but I picture like a superhero, like floating a few feet off the ground, like on their own stoke, and the power of their own energy. And it was that, he was so in the moment that like you just wanted to be around him. Like, and that's what it was. And it's not necessarily something that he said. You meet people, and this is not, I don't think this is unusual or uncommon. It's, but we meet people from time to time who are, unintentionally charismatic and engaging when they just don't have to try to. You just want to be around them because they have positive energy. And that's what I needed. And it kind of just clicked, and that's really what struck me. And for what it's worth, I'm somebody, who's I travel by myself a lot. So it's, I like meeting people on the road, if even only for a moment, especially the ones that kind of stay with you. And that's, really what I thought had happened at the time was, here's another great memory you can kind of put in your book. And obviously there's more to the story here where I'm going. And I think even if there hadn't have been more to the story, I would have remembered Rich for a very, very long time. And that's not to say that I'm not, like virtue signaling or something like that. I remember, I forget stuff about my own kids all the time. It's just to say, you just know when somebody leaves like an indelible mark on you, even if it's something, that's seemingly inconsequential at the time. So let me keep us rolling along here. So fast forward to a few weeks ago, and I got a message on Instagram from someone I didn't recognize. And as I'm sure you guys know, I get lots of messages. If it weren't for porn bots, I'd have no friends at all, right? So you get lots of messages on Instagram that aren't always sincere, but this one caught my attention. I looked, and I realized that it was a woman by the name of Christina, who had found pictures that Rich had took when we met at the gas station, and she tracked me down through Instagram and shared with me that Rich had been hit by a drunk driver in Florida and passed away. So this was in, I think, early August, and so that kind of hit me like any time that happens when you learn about somebody's death, hits you like a punch in the gut. I was, on the one hand, I was really and am incredibly sorry for the family and their loss. But I don't know how else to say this other than I was really happy that they found me. So it's weird to say those things in the same sentence, just because I was really glad that somebody who knew this guy found me, because, and this is selfish, I guess, but because it gave me the opportunity to tell them that I had met Rich, and that it wasn't, just a chance encounter, or it was a chance encounter, but he left a really big impression on me. So I was very happy to hear that. This is, as I, took a look around and learned more about the situation, I came to find that Rich was a very accomplished chef. He was owner and co-owner of multiple restaurants in Massachusetts, an extremely active, diehard rider, and very active in the Latin American Motorcycle Association, or LAMA, and really just a really incredible husband and son and member of the community. And that's he had a big impact on a lot of people, from what I can tell. And it's sad, unfortunately, of course, that he's gone. But definitely, this is an opportunity for us to say fare thee well, and to help make sure that people like Rich, that they not fade away, that their memories not fade away. So that's what was the core part of today's show. I'm going to take a breath for a moment, give the rest of the crew a chance to jump in here. But thoughts, etc. You, Carlos, you've been riding for 40 years. Mike, you've been riding a long time. I got to guess that you guys have encountered this before, and so I'll stop and let you get a word in.
There's a gentleman that I still honor after 13 years of his passing. He was my riding buddy way in the beginning on the hard chapter, and we just kind of connected. I mean, we were about as opposite as could be, but we seemed to bond, and we kind of looked at everybody else with this disdain. And I used to make fun of his Harley because I said it sounded too much like a sewing machine. And after that, he got pipes that had a bigger rumble to it. And we had all these plans, and we all had these plans to be able to go to various rallies and such. But as life would throw a curveball on it, he got cancer. And in the last few years, I mean, I helped him get through, or try to get through as best as recover. And he wanted to do that last ride. He wanted to get that last bike, and he wanted to, and I helped him go and get that last bike. And, he could hardly hold it up, but it didn't matter. He wanted to stand up on it and just hold it up. And, and his last days, when he passed away, his wife, his widow, had reached out to me. She says, now she was from a strict, I'd say fairly strict Jewish background. And she says, I want you to come to the synagogue dressed in your colors. I want you to be dressed up, and I want you to come into the synagogue with everything you got. So I came with two other guys, and we were with all our badges. And of course, the rabbi was hesitant to have us in the synagogue. And she came out with my friend's vest on and told him basically in a nice way, go fuck yourself, and these guys are going to be here. So that started it. And then when she said, I want you to escort his funeral procession, and the funeral director said, no, he's not going to do it. She again stepped forward from that. And ever since that period, I have three things that I still share with him. And that would be, he had big ass feet. My feet are 9.5. And he had like 10.5 boots.
Yeah.
And he gave me his boots. And I was determined to wear his boots. So I could always say he always walks with me.
Yeah.
And I still have those boots 13 years later with a lot of inserts, but he walks with me.
Nice.
I have his goggles, and the goggles are okay, no problem with that. I have his chaps, so he protects me. So I have this thing that I say he walks with me, he protects me with my chaps. And the one last thing that she gave me, and what I was just showing him, was he loved his cigars.
Oh yeah.
And she said this is the only thing she told me I couldn't keep, but she would let me have it as long, she would lend it to me until I died, and which I'm supposed to give it back to the family.
Carry on.
And on it was etched in here an expression that he had, and I'll just finish it off here. He was always known to say, "Woohoo, what a ride!"
Yeah.
His philosophy was, I don't want to die with a perfect body. I want to die with a body that's weathered, tattered, beat up, scratched up, scratching in there, and say, no, I want to go down in a place of glory. And to that end, I have this lighter, which I always carry with me to remember him. So if there's anybody that's there, and each time his anniversary, or I think of him, and I go out to his grave, he's buried in a military grave. I go out there, take a picture, and I send it to the family. I got the highest honor being called a mensch.
Yes.
And then beginning, I wasn't sure if I just got insulted, but I found out later on, no, a mensch is a good thing.
Yes.
It's a good thing. So I carry the title of mensch because of my friend Kevin.
I'm here. This is I don't know if this is going to get me into trouble with somebody, but I don't care. This is like what I'll blame it on Paulie Walnuts. This is what Paulie Walnuts from The Sopranos. I live in what would be described as Elvis country, and that is anywhere where there is a very, very, very few people of Italian and Jewish descent. And meaning there's no good pizza, there's no restaurants around here. I can't find a bagel, anything like that. Again, I'll probably get in trouble for this, but culturally, that food in the Northeast that's so abundant, is like that's making, when you said mensch, that's the first thing I thought of was Ryan's Deli. But anyway, that's a really cool story, and maybe for another episode, file this one, guys, but what you're like, the talismans and things that we carry and the things that we keep with us that either have intrinsic meaning to us some way, or they came from somebody else. And that's I think of the gold pocket watch scene from Pulp Fiction. If you guys have seen that movie, if you haven't, it's worth a few minutes just to watch the clip on YouTube. But yeah, that's and Carlos, it's worth noting. You should be commended, because I know you are extremely active in Patriot Guard and other groups that on a regular basis help people make sure that their loved ones and their relatives get a good send off. So kudos to you for that. I'll if you guys, again, if you have anybody else that you want to mention, please do so. I want to just to make a quick connection here. At the same time that I found out about Rich, unrelated to motorcycles and motorcycle riding, I found out that a very good friend of mine had died. And in fact, she died about a year ago, and I didn't know. And there's a lot of tragicness around the situation. But this friend that died, she was the wife of my college roommate and one of my best friends, who also passed away, predeceased her by a couple of years. Both, not great circumstances. And I found out this news. The reason why I'm telling you this is I found this out around the same time that I found out about Rich. And this husband and wife couple that passed away, I'm still processing it, and probably will be for some time. But one of the things I think I concluded was Jay, the husband who died, was my best friend. I had a feeling he wasn't long for this world, and that's another story. When Amy died, it almost hit me even harder. And I think as I've tried to make sense of it, it was because, they were two people who were major characters in the story of my life. And I expected them to be in the story longer. And now that chapter is closed, and, everything about them is gone, like and that, coming to that realization kind of hit me. And the characters in the story is the best analogy I can find for it. It helps me make sense of it. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is, I could tell before any of this happened, just in the moment that I met Rich, that he was the kind of person who was a major character. And he was somebody who was probably a major character in a lot of people's stories. And I didn't know him, but for a moment. But I can tell, I know what it feels like to have a character that you love, to lose a character that you love in the story of your life, and to not be able to get that back. And so I think I can understand, and I want to wish again, I'm sure on behalf of all of us, the most sincere sympathies to Rich and the family. To his mom, Christina, Sonia, his wife, thanks for reaching out. I hope that you guys, do the best that you can considering the circumstances. On behalf of Old and Away, we made a donation to the GoFundMe for Sonia and her family, Rich's wife. Again, we wish them all the best. Go easy, bro. So thank you for giving us time.
Especially in those circumstances, because you're talking about where the circumstance that it was an accident. It wasn't a natural thing. Right. It wasn't something that died in his sleep, or he had a debilitating illness. That's what's a thing that we all must be vigilant, because we hear it all the time. And we've seen enough of those videos that you see us, a guy tooling around on the local street. There's the Walmart on the one side, there's the gas station, and you're just minding your own business. You're not going very fast. And that lady who was going to make, or that man who was going to make that left turn, decides at road to, oh God, I'm going to make the right turn. And and smash. So we do have to keep our heads on a swivel, and to be doubly prepared to be able to do that extreme stop with an extreme maneuver.
Yeah.
And what, Jay, I suggest to you, as I do with my friend here, Kevin, and others that I do, is I periodically, use, these mementos or dates or anniversaries or things to share with the family. As I come across photographs out of my archives, I share with the family, and I'll remember the guy's birthday, or I'll remember on the anniversary of his passing, something that, it doesn't have to be something big, but just say, hey, our thoughts and prayers. And that keeps that family always remember you. It doesn't matter that you are passing ships, that means the world to the family to say, hey, this dude who only had a short interaction with my husband and father, etc., will always remember him. And that you'll feel good, they'll feel good. And that's one way to keep that person alive.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I want to go back to the risks of riding that you were talking about in a moment, but this is not something I put in the show notes or we talked about. So this is, I'm letting you guys inside the mind of the madman here as we speak. But in trying to one of the problems I had, Carlos, with Jay and Amy's death is that they, without opening up that can of worms too much, I can speak for Jay. Jay was a hardcore alcoholic who had really distanced himself and isolated himself from a lot of people later in life, and as is often that becomes the case, and Amy too, and they were they didn't have a lot of people in their network. And the way I know this is, friends of ours and people that we went to college with and stuff, like many people don't know that they died. There's no other way to say it. So I started to think of, to your point, like, how can I do something where I can start to put these memories in some place? And what you described is something I'm not really sure how I'm going to bring it to life, but that's something that I want to do. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And that's a great idea to kind of process things. Going back to the riding aspect of it, I thought of, it's like, when you hear that a friend of yours gets divorced or something like that, you're like, oh my God, what happened? What'd you do? How'd you fuck up? So I can make sure that, it doesn't happen to me. And that's kind of natural. Like, people hear that. And, Rich was hit by a drunk driver. There's nothing that you can do, but there are things you can try to mitigate the risk. And I thought, I'm glad you mentioned it, Carlos, because I thought we should, it's value we can add for new riders. There's no guarantees, but things like approaching intersections and being prepared to come to a complete stop if you have to, or evade, or avoid a crash. I don't know if I do it all the time, but these are things I try to remember. If I'm driving down, the road I take to the highway from here is a 2-lane, 4-lane road, 2 lanes each way, and there's lots of neighborhoods. So I'm not going to be in the right lane where a car can pull out in front of me and not look, just turning to keep going, and you watch those kinds of things. So I don't know if there's any other obvious suggestions you guys have, but it's a good reminder that, you can wear all the gear all the time. There's some things you just can't control, but you can reduce your risk significantly by knowing where the most likely spots to get in an accident are and trying to avoid those things. So it's worth remembering, right?
Only 2 accidents I can say that I've had in my 40 some odd years of riding. One, it was, like you said, here I am. I have full leathers on, jacket, boots. I'm very well protected. I'm leading 2 other guys. We're going to an event. We're going from the Long Island Expressway onto the Cross Island, just crossing over just a little bit there. And a guy from the extreme left-hand lane decides he has to make that exit ramp.
Yeah.
And he straight across in front of me. My options at that point, I had enough of a buffer in front of me, but when you got another car in front of you, what do? You either go into the other car, you hit the concrete wall, or you hit the guy in front, or you try to brake as efficiently as possible. And in that case, I braked as efficiently as possible, which then still threw me over the handlebars. But I'm going to be facetious about it because the buddies who behind me know that I've taken 50 years of martial arts training. And the best that I could get from these guys telling me, what did it look like? all I got from that, man, you were so cool, man. You like flipped in the air and you were like,
was there a lot of like that?
And I landed square on my back with no injuries, no spraying, and the only damage I could see, my right boot was a little scuffed. My right shoulder had a little bit of a road burst there. My helmet, a little bit. I was fine. The first thing I said as everybody ran over to me, how's the bike? Was my immediate reaction. So, and then to finish off the story is, no police, no nothing. They said, okay, keep on going. I went to the event with these two guys. When I got home to my wife, umpteen hours later, I said to her, honey, I had an accident, which she thought just happened.
Yeah.
She said, when did it happen? 8 o'clock this morning. And now it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Where were you?
You keep riding.
I said they were offering free hot dogs and hamburgers. I just couldn't avoid it. So, protection, awareness. What could I have done? I don't think I could have done anything, more to that. It just happened. I was lucky in the sense that I had enough material or chaps or a leather jacket, and that it wasn't a tremendous speed. Huh?
You had your gear on.
I had all I couldn't even understand how I wasn't even sore. Didn't have to take Advil, didn't have to take ibuprofen, nothing, nothing to put the whole body together. And I was like, and I even looked at the bike, said, "What? That doesn't look too bad. It's a little cosmetic, but it's not too bad." But later I found out that, it's a long story. Finally, insurance company totaled the bike. And they gave me more money than what I could have sold the bike for. So there was a happy ending at the end of that story. So
very cool. Yeah, sounds like somebody was looking out for you. The universe was on your side that day. That's a really cool story, though. That's a reminder too that once again, it can happen at any moment. The karate skills sound like they came into play there, huh?
I don't know.
All right. Well, moving on. Last topic for the day. Last week we talked about a television show, reality show by the name of American MC. It's a 7-episode docu-series that ran, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago on, I don't even know what channel, but you can stream it on just about anything. And as we discussed last week, happened upon this show by finding clips on Facebook where people in riding groups were, generally kind of mocking and making fun of the riders and the show and the premise. And it's, no surprise there that, it's a tough crowd that you would see that. And I would really, as I said last week, if anybody had told me that they were planning on making a reality show about riding motorcycles, I would say don't do it because, it's just going to, I don't think it would be well received by the community necessarily. And it's going to suffer from that. So I watched every minute of all 7 episodes, and I actually, I shouldn't say as if I'm surprised, I really enjoyed it. It definitely it didn't need to be 7 episodes, that's for sure. And there are moments that, dragged, and I did it while I was, working in my garage here. But I really, really liked it. And there's a couple of reasons why I really, really liked it. And reality shows are heavily produced and often are not as much reality as we might think they are. And I say this as somebody who's seen every episode of every season of Survivor. So, I know that these are games or it's entertainment, whatever. But what I realized after kind of digesting it is, as far as motorcycles go, and this is really kind of the anchor point of why I think this show is worth watching, 2 things you can't fake are speed and miles. So all the guys that they video, and the men and women that they video, follow through this show, really are riding hundreds and hundreds of miles a day at 80, 90 plus miles an hour through challenging conditions and doing all this shit. That's really happening. So as a rider, when you see, how much of the off the bike stuff may be overly produced, I don't know, but to a certain extent, you're seeing the reaction of a dude who just got off his bike after riding, 400 miles, and it's now 3 o'clock in the morning, and they're going to get up and do it again in 2 hours or whatever. So, that is interesting to me. I knew at least that piece you were seeing some genuine footage. So, It was neat to have Gary Busey and Brian Bosworth showed up. Brian Bosworth was very, he was pretty cool in the show. He seems like a really down to earth guy at it. Gary Busey was classic Gary Busey. But not to spoil it too much for you, but there's a moment when they're driving down a mountainside on a dirt road, which again, shit that I would never even consider doing on my bike. These guys are riding a pack of Harleys down the side of a fucking mountain on a dirt road, and Gary Busey is having a hard time. And Brian Bosworth offers, he's like, buddy, you can, you know, like he's trying to be as cool about it as possible. Just hop on with me, you know, hop on with me. And, but he refused and he made it down. And it's like, as crazy as this show and this entire concept is, I found it, it endeared itself to me, or whatever you want to say. So it was very good. Go ahead.
I think it's good in the sense that it gives an insight of regular guys. Sort of think of wild hogs, but expand 3 times over. Yeah. So meaning, so you got like in the original Wild Hogs, you got 4 guys, 4 walks of life. They all got their issues, and they said, "Let's get on a motorcycle and let's find ourselves." All right. So imagine multiplying that 3 times with 12 different guys, 12 different, experiences and everything, and kind of bonding together, finding themselves. And you get to really find that I could understand or commiserate with one. Like one guy said, I got a wife and kids.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ride, 90 miles an hour, 6 feet, 6 inches from the guy in front of me, just because we want to stay in a pack and look badass. I'm sorry. I'm not going to, I could relate to that guy. Yeah. And then there was the guy who said, I got to go on a ride with these guys. I mean, I got to ride. The wife's like, hey, if you go on this ride, that's it. We're done, and a little blurb comes up that, she divorced him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and
he made his choice.
And he got the concept. And, then they get to meet real biker people like Hell's Angels that kind of give them an insight about what the rules are about riding.
Yeah.
And now you got regular guys, regular working class guys, got to pay for their bikes versus these guys who are like, don't give a rat's ass about anything, that have such a strict code.
Right.
That they came to reality that said, wow, do we want to be like these guys? Do we want to follow that mindset, or do we want to do it? And, it really, as far as like you said, whether or not and I'm not to ruin anything there, but you got to wonder, what would the Hell's Angels have said and done had the camera not been rolling? Versus, when when Jay and I had talked about this, here's the president of this Hell's Angels chapter. Let me tell you, he had the biggest, most pleasant face that you would want to be your best buddy.
Yeah.
But you didn't get to that position by being a real nice, easygoing, mellow guy.
No.
So, and he was always had this grin.
He had the
like
biggest shit-eating grin that you've ever seen, with like just a nice psychotic twinge to it.
Say, you mess with me, I'm going to kill you, with a smile on my face.
Yeah,
so
if you can keep up, you can stay up.
When the camera was rolling, the guy said the right things to tell these people, this is what you should do.
And that's why
in reality, I think in my heart, had that camera not been rolling, there would have been a severe stomping into the ground, smashing of the bike, and say, now, stand up if you're a man enough to take it. That kind of thing.
Yeah, but, and that's why you should watch
who
the
knows
show
if they made it, don't they? But did you notice, Jay? They would block out.
Yeah, that's why. I wanted to so they would blur out the Hell's Angels patches only on some of the riders' jackets. Only on some of the riders, and they're so. That's a really good point in that I did notice that, and just on the producing note about how much of this show American MC, how much of it is real versus what was produced. I know, and I'm not qualified to speak on this or an expert, but from what I understand, the Hell's Angels are very protective of their likeness, and they're obviously like anybody would. And there are very few videos and movies and documentaries that or anything where they allow themselves to be filmed and their likeness like that to be used. So I thought it was interesting in the show. There were some members whose faces and patches were obscured, and there's some members who were not. What that tells you, though, is that there was a conversation about who was going to be obscured and who was not. So you know that before that gas station first encounter happened, or as it happened, there was a conversation with the producers about how is this going to play out. And that's what happened. And that's at the show, not any of the writers. You know, and so I did think that was interesting.
And the type of writing I can say that I had the opportunity to run and write at an invitation with a 2% club. I'll just not say who they were, but I'll just say because as a photographer, I had the unique opportunity I was invited.
Were you there to take? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Were you supposed to be taking pictures, or were you just a photographer who was there?
I was a photographer there, but I knew one of the other guys who knew my work.
Okay.
And respected my work, and he introduced me to these other guys. And he said, and so I said, you know what? You don't get this opportunity, much like those guys, to take pictures of these guys. And the president did say, you will not publish this without my authority, and that was fine. Bottom line is, I took pictures, great pictures of them. I shared it with them, not for public display, but they said you could ride with us.
That's cool.
That was my first introduction into riding with a group that said, and similar to the Hells Angels, riding 6 inches from each other, cheek to cheek, top speed. I tell you, my shorts weren't the same when I finished. I mean, I never thought that they were a little colored, but I said, and they said, how'd you like that, Sensei? Yeah. Awesome.
Real good.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah. And I made a point of it. I'll never ride like that ever again.
Yeah.
So,
well, one of the reasons to watch the show, if I could make a recommendation to rider, if you're interested in the show in any reason, and if you're a rider and you're interested in club riding, and either you are in a club or you're not in a club, or you feel very strongly one way or the other, that was definitely a core theme of the show. I found an interview with Tommy Baker, who was the lead, the quote unquote, president maybe of this club. And the idea of the show, again, for those who weren't familiar, was these guys want to form a motorcycle club. And one of the great things I found about it was that there's this constant running dialogue between the people who want to be in a club and want to dress, act, ride, and look a certain way, and the people who see themselves as fierce individualists who, and I'm kind of inserting that, who are like, I don't want to follow everybody else's rules. And these guys all seem to be very aware of sort of what club protocol is and the way things are. And there's definitely some who do and do not want to be, a part of that. And what's interesting about it is they debate this topic ad infinitum throughout the show, which is one of the things I found really interesting, because I like to, I would love to ride with a group, but I'm also the kind of person who's like, I want to do my own fucking thing, or I also have a huge problem with authority, right? So it's like, you have to agree. And there's one moment where Big Tom, who was one of the characters I liked a lot, he was an older guy, who said, if we all ride together and we kind of dress alike and we're going the same speed and we're doing these things, well, then they're not rules anymore, right? It's just the way that it is. And I think that's the trouble you run into trying to re-engineer a club out of people who are not necessarily all committed to that. Ultimately, in the interview I saw with Tommy Baker, he said that they ultimately decided to forego starting a club, which is, contrary to what you see in the last episode. And he says it's the reasons, what I just described was basically, what he attributed it to, is that, great guys, but just not everybody could agree that this is what they wanted to do. And, he still said he rides with a lot of the guys, so that's cool for a happy ending. But again, I think it's worth a watch if you're interested at all in motorcycles, the culture around clubs, and, kind of watching what normal sort of relatable people think about the question of, do I want to ride alone or just with buddies, or do I want the ride with a group and everything that comes with it? Do I want to pay that tax, which is you got to dress and act and do certain things and give yield to the club, really. So great series. I definitely recommend you check it out if you get a chance.
And to that, Jay, to that thought about, and I Scott, you really should just kind of check it out from an outside perspective to look at this culture and attitude, which, about whether to ride with this group I saw, which there's other one side caveat that we could talk about later on is then saying there's a couple of things. Do you ride with a windshield or don't ride with a windshield? Is that topic of saying there's guys who say no, I won't, and there's that whole conversation you can have there. Two, whether or not you ride with you have music or no music.
Yep.
Do you like the ride? Do you like just to hear the sound of the engine and your own thoughts and everything? As far as riding with sound, and of course it gets down to whether or not what kind of a helmet, a full face, a shorty, or 3/4 like that, and you can always find within that phase of conversation how split people are that get into talking about making decisions. So on a future conversation level, about decision making, not only joining a group, riding alone or with a group, but not only what you wear, what you put on, and think about it.
And I'll in closing on that topic, one of the spoiler alert for anybody who wants to watch the series, the last ride that they do is, I think, from Tombstone to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, maybe not, from wherever they were to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, and they at that point there's lots of, this is the first time where there's all kinds of guests riding with them, and they pick up some ladies in one of the local bars and they're riding with them, and so they have a large group. And one of the people riding them was a guy with a dog, actually, which, of course, jumped out to me, and he had a dog strapped to his chest. And unfortunately, this is a tough note, but he went down on the ride. So as they find out later that one of their guest riders went down, and there's enough footage of this guy, and the dog was okay, which is good, and hopefully the guy was okay. But there's footage of him laying on the side of the road with a massive head injury in a pool of blood going down, and I think it's his body, his decision. And I think that's, I know people make those choices, but I can't help but think, like, if you just had something on your head, this might be a different story right now than, you laying here in a pool of blood. So, make your own decisions. And that's the thing. I don't mean to sound preachy, but it definitely, I mentioned that because it is kind of a downer moment in the show. But it's, all these guys, it's in contrast to most of the riders on this show not wearing helmets and sort of being outwardly spoken. So we'll talk about that in a future episode. I think that's a good divisive topic to get into. Maybe we can get some guests for that.
One last thing there, Jay. Yeah. And yes, you were going back to the theme about remembering a rider.
Yeah.
Yesterday, there was over 500 to 600 riders that came out to honor a kid called Richie. That was the annual. This kid, Richie, was a 9/11. He died in 9/11. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time, a young EMT. And since then, these guys have been remembering this kid, like I said, 18 years old, that should not have been there. But since then, they've carried on his memory. So yesterday, like 500 to 600 riders escorted ride to remember this guy named Ride for Richie 9/11. So talk about the ultimate recognition of it. 22 years later, they're still remembering this. I mean, to be honest with you, as a former EMS guy, I remember this kid because he was from a sister volunteer ambulance corps, young kid, in the background, and he happened to be at the wrong spot because he wasn't supposed to be in the city, and as they say, the rest is history. But anyway, just to that theme of you saying, remember 22 years later, they're remembering this young man who died in 9/11.
Yeah, and that's a great tribute, and we'll talk more about this upcoming episode before we get to October. But there's an event I became aware of this week for suicide prevention and particularly veteran suicide prevention, and it's an event in October where you need to do 400 miles, and it's a charity event, and you don't have to do it all at once. You just have to do 400 miles in October to be a part of the event and to help raise money and awareness. So I'm going to be participating in that. I'll share the information. We can do 400 miles standing on our heads in 1 month, but that'll be definitely something that maybe we can do as part of the show. So more to come on that. I'll get the information out. I want to wrap us up. We're at the top of the hour here. I want to thank you guys again for taking time out of your Sundays to be here and be part of the show. I want to thank again the family of Richard Daviow and his wife Sonia and his mother Christina and all of his family and friends. Our thoughts are with you, and we hope that despite the circumstances, that things get better, and we'll help to make sure that Rich never fades away. So. Thank you very much for finding me on Instagram and giving me a chance to pay tribute to Rich. I really appreciate that. So, with that said, guys, I appreciate the time once again. Anybody got any last minute notes before we wrap up for the week?
Well, Mike, you're too quiet today.
Yeah, no, Mike, sorry.
No, I've been actually fortunate. I don't know anybody that rides that's ever had a serious incident.
Yeah,
well,
let's
that's
hope
good.
it stays that way.
Yeah.
Speaking on
how about this, Mike? Do you have any upstate rides to go on and appreciate the leaves that are changing right now?
Oh, the leaf peeper
before
season.
Before it turns, yeah, do some leaf peeping before it turns into winter.
Yeah. Now the weather's cooling. I still haven't worked on my bike, but now that it's cold out or getting really chilly, I can ride without fear of it overheating. So I'll probably take it out a couple of more times.
nature's cooling system, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, before it snows anyway.
What about you got any trips are you heading are you driving west at all to visit family anytime soon? You'll get some good
No, I have nothing planned for now.
Yeah, all right.
So right now everything is kind of on the chill side.
Yeah, well, could you let Sammy know that my insurance is going to lapse in a couple months and I need a crown. So if she could step it up a notch.
Good luck with that. I'm not even getting a discount.
Oh, no. All right. Fair enough. I'll get in line.
She's already told me.
Yeah.
She's already told me there's no family discount.
Does she take Cobra?
Jay's going to join the military just for the dental plan.
I'm thinking about it. Yeah. That's not a bad deal. All right. Well,
yeah, they don't want you at your age, buddy.
Yeah, I'm damaged goods.
Yeah. But here in Denver, the lows are getting into the 40s again, which is really exciting for me because I do not enjoy the heat of summer. So it's getting real. Not quite leaf peeping out here. There's a lot of evergreens, so it doesn't get as colorful as it does in New England.
When is the earliest you start to get flurries there?
The average first is October 18th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I would have liked to see it by now already, but I'll take whatever I can get. Bring it.
Yeah. All right.
That snowblower is coming out anytime now. Huh?
That's right. I went over and bought my ethanol-free gas. I filled up the 13-gallon tank, and I'm ready for it, which probably will make sure that it won't snow until like February. I should have. I have a thing where I don't know the word for de-winterizing something. Taking it out, putting fresh gas in, doing all that. I'm not doing it until it snows because the first snow, I'm not going to need it anyway. Yeah. And I feel like I'm just, tempting Mother Nature to make it unseasonably warm. We used to call it Indian summer. I don't think that's in vogue anymore, but whatever we call that now, late summer.
Gypsy summer.
If I de-winterize my stuff, that's what's going to happen. So.
How long is it where I promise we're wrapping up? Last question and comment. How long do you get without putting stable in it? How long will you keep gas in a can before you think it's no good?
A couple of years.
A couple of years. All right.
I'm not picky when it comes to that. I'm sure these guys who have machines they care about.
I have my I have a 30-ounce spare that I used to bottle that I kept on my bike when I had the 2-gallon tank, and I'll use it for longer trips, if I needed it. But I put gas in it 6 months ago. I haven't used it, and I'm thinking I should probably just pour it in my tank and refill it periodically, so I'm not letting the old gas in there. But I was wondering, how long is that? I know like lawnmowers and shit like that, I used to put stable, that STABIL additive in there over the winter, but I wouldn't mess with a bike with something like that. So, all right. Well,
I'm only using it for my lawnmower, so I don't particularly care. I haven't filled this big tank up in 18 months, and everything is fine. Although, I don't know, that lawnmower is starting to belch a little smoke anyway. And I said as soon as it dies, I will replace it with an electric one. Yeah. So now the Cub Cadet is like, oh no, I got another 10 years in me.
I'm not dead yet. What were you gonna say,
exactly.
Mike? I keep a couple of containers of gas for different things: generator, the quad.
Leaf burning.
Well, no, I wish. Lawnmowers, things like that. And what I usually do is I put stabilizer in, and every 6 months I rotate that gas into the vehicles and I buy fresh gas. So every June, every December, that's when I change it. And I don't have to think about it. You know, it's like, oh, it's June, do it. It's December, do it. And I don't have to remember when was the last time I did it.
Yeah,
That's
I had
pretty
6
smart
months
idea.
in my head as like sort of a guideline, but all right. Well, you know, we can cover gas at an upcoming episode. I saw a really cute cartoon on Instagram that had like a bunch of soldiers dead on the field, and one winning soldier was like, "How do we know they're all dead?" And one of the other winning soldiers yells out, "What kind of oil should I put in my motorcycle?" And like a bunch of the guys who were supposedly dead sit up and start yelling out.
Yeah,
So apparently this is a hotly debated topic. So we'll get into that next week. Thanks guys for running over. I appreciate the extra time. I hope you guys all have a fantastic Sunday. And for all of our listeners and viewers now and in the future, you have an awesome Sunday as well. We'll see you on the flip side, guys. Have an awesome weekend. Take care.
Good to see you, gentlemen.
Cheers, everyone. Have a good weekend.